Have you ever been curious about the Monster Hunter saga, but somehow it also scared you? All that is said about this video game saga, that they are long, tedious games, with a lot of farming or difficult. Well, you're not the only one. A lot of people felt the same way, and in fact, many of us, like me, tried a Monster Hunter once or twice. And we ended up not liking it, maybe because it has too much text or because we don't like the game dynamics. Well, for all those people, for those who have tried it and didn't like it, or those who want to try a Monster Hunter for the first time, I tell you that Monster Hunter Wilds is the ideal one. From the very first moment of this video game, Capcom makes it very clear that you don't need to be a veteran of this saga to enjoy it. This is the first Monster Hunter I've ever tried in my life, where you simply start playing and that's it. There's not too much to go around, not too much to understand. And in fact, you can play the vast majority of the game without understanding all of its mechanics, which is particularly what I did. I went through the whole game without using many of its weapons, or its armors, or its mechanics. I didn't even cook. I went through the whole game without cooking. Cooking is one of the things you have to do in the game. Well, if you're curious about Monster Hunter Wilds, and you don't quite understand how it's played and who the title is aimed at, today's video is special because I'm going to tell you everything you need to know before you buy the video game and all the gameplay you're going to see next. It's also 100% real gameplay generated by me, played on the PlayStation 5 Pro. The gameplay of Monster Hunter Wilds focuses on three specific aspects: exploration, combat, and character building. And we're going to address these three features separately, starting with exploration. The world design of Monster Hunter Wilds is one of the great successes of this video game. Since the world is large enough to invite us to exploration, but without falling into the trap of being an open, empty, tedious, and repetitive world, like Ubisoft games, for example. In addition, the fact that they have introduced an automatic mount that takes us from point A to point B on autopilot makes it much more fun to explore and allows us to focus on observing the environment. Because one of the most interesting things about exploring is observing. What monsters do we encounter and what materials can we find there, on the ground? You open the map, pick a destination, and instruct your bird to rush there. And meanwhile, you look to see if you encounter any monsters or simply any resource that interests you. It's like getting an Uber to go around the city. Monster Hunter went from being a video game series where you move around, going back and forth from the mission to the base. It was repetitive and tedious. To a more entertaining activity, or at least interactive. Because while you're riding on your bird seeing what's there, you don't have to be figuring out how to get to the destination because the bird goes alone. You're alert, watching for anything you can salvage. What if you spot a distant monster or potential prey? Or do you simply dedicate yourself to listening to the dialogues between the characters? The maps are quite large and varied, and present a good handful of ecosystems with different characteristics, such as jungles, snowy places, deserts, underground places, and so on. But the game's campaign is not going to take you to visit all the places in this world. There are many of these places that you will only visit if you are curious enough to discover the entire map. One of the good things to highlight in this game is that the map is big enough to be interesting, but not so much as to be boring and repetitive. And besides, it's full of monsters that will mess up your life as they're out there in their ecosystem. The second aspect to highlight is the combat. From the beginning of Monster Hunter Ways, are you fighting? Fighting is the soul of the video game, and it's basically the only thing that makes the plot advance. Going to kill a monster. At the beginning, these battles against large monsters are very good. They are quite easy. At least the first 3, 4, 5 initial monsters are not going to cost you too much work. Then there comes a time in the game when the fights do get a little harder, and more demanding enemies appear. They are going to assume that you dedicate a little to at least working on your weapon, improving your armor, and other things. But the moment when the monsters get a little more complicated comes around the 7th hour of the game. That is, you have a good stretch of the game to get used to Monster Hunter combat if you've never played one of these titles before. And this is one of the aspects that makes the game ideal for new people or new fans, like in any other role-playing game. As we progress through the story, we are provided with increasingly better weapons, better armor, other items that we didn't have at the beginning, and other things. And the good thing about all this is that at the beginning of the game, they give us the basics and the essentials. 2 or 3 sets of armor and free weapons, so we can choose whichever we want. You don't have to overcomplicate things, you can just start and play. And it's not like from the first boss you have to be paying attention. Like, what's my build? How do I construct it to be able to kill him? Because it's complicated, right? The first bosses are almost anecdotal and are ideal for introducing you to the game and above all to the handling of the weapons, which are many. From moment 0, you have all the weapons unlocked, meaning, from the beginning, you can choose the set of weapons that you like the most. In fact, it's one of the first things they give you to choose from. You don't have to choose a group of weapons and keep it forever, because you can change them whenever you want. And ideally, the first 3 or 4 or 5 monsters. Well, you use them as a test to try out the different types of weapons and things the game gives you, like to defeat the enemies. There are weapons that are very fun, and there are weapons that are more classic and predictable. The combat is very fun and very satisfying. Despite the chaos of battling oversized monsters, your small character is joined by other characters in the fray. And the camera gets pretty crazy. You don't find those moments that one says how unfair they killed me because of the camera. Like in Souls-like, things didn't go well here. I couldn't see clearly and got hit a couple of times. No problem. If you take a lot of hits and end up getting knocked out, there's also no big problem. Because once you're knocked out or knocked down, they rescue you. The tiny kittens, I can't remember what they're called, take you to the nearest base. They give you a green juice to recover. They recover you and you return to the battlefield. You can do this up to 3 times because you have 3 lives, so to speak. Every time this happens, you're going to lose points or the money you get for defeating monsters. Believe me, if you're somewhat used to playing third-person action-adventure games, it's not going to happen more than once or twice throughout the entire game. Because the enemies in campaign mode are not difficult. When you're fighting against monsters, they're going to develop a kind of red swords that indicate points where you've already weakened the monster. And if you keep hitting there, you're going to do more damage and, well, you're going to cause critical hits. You can use or you can choose not to use this and just shoot at the pile. You can use super effective weapons or use the funniest and craziest weapons that you think are good. You can have the superset armor to face that enemy or not have it as you see fit. Either way, sooner or later, all monsters fall. I didn't come across any monster that I would say, oof, if I don't prepare, I can't defeat it. Sooner or later, they all fall. The third aspect to consider in Monster Hunter Wilds is character building, as in any good role-playing game. We're going to have the typical forge, where we can take our materials and the pieces of monster we're collecting to improve our weapons, armor, and other things. While there are many options within the forge, the most important ones are these 2 up here. Forge or improve. Armor. Here we will be able to create armors from the pieces and parts of monsters that we are defeating. All these armors have different appearances and different characteristics, such as resistances, weaknesses, strengths, and other things. And it is assumed that for expert monster hunting, you have to pay attention to these statistics in order to have the appropriate armor for each occasion. The armor designs are beautiful and are all inspired by the different monsters we are hunting. The armors are also divided into different categories, such as common and rare, ultra rare, and things like that. At the beginning of the game, you will be able to make simple armors based on the first monsters you are hunting. And then, as you progress, you will have increasingly better equipment. There are a lot of statistics on this screen, data and information about the armors, which are worth considering. But perhaps already in the endgame of the game, right off the bat, you can go through the entire title just by putting on whatever armor you can think of. With the weapons, more or less the same. Well, you have all these weapons to choose from, as I was telling you from the 0 moment of the game, and you have weapons that are long range, close combat, or even hybrid. And just like with the armors, you can upgrade all these weapons with the different parts of the monsters you managed to get. You also have many statistics that tell you what type of damage the weapon does, what type of hits it generates, what type of materials you need to upgrade them, and so on and so forth. You can easily go through the entire video game without being an expert in this and without understanding too much of all these data. All the equipment that you generate, improve, or acquire, well, you're always going to have it available and you can change any part of this equipment whenever you want. That is, if you made an armor that is resistant to fire, just to give an example, it will stay there, you will have it. If later you make one resistant to ice, well, when you have to face a fire enemy, you change it back and that's it. I specifically, throughout the game, only made 4 sets of armor, and I went through the whole game with those 4 sets. Once you finish the game's campaign, you start with the endgame. There things get different, a bit harder, and there you really have to step it up a bit more. What kind of armor you're wearing and what kind of defenses you have, how you attack, your strategies and so on. But by that time you've already put in 15 or 20 hours into the game and it's not so hard to tackle those numbers anymore. Off the bat, I would tell you not to worry too much. Put on whatever armor you want, whatever weapon you want, enjoy the game, it's a good time. And what if suddenly you hit a wall because you can't fight the enemy you're up against? Well, you change the armor and that's it. Your character doesn't see it, have stats, or gain experience or anything similar. With the upgraded equipment, you have the flexibility to make changes as often as needed without any wrong decisions. Finally, let's talk about the game cycle. How do you play the title? Because Monster Hunter Wilds differs in some things from the typical Monster Hunter that we have played so far. But at the same time, it's quite faithful to the whole saga, so to speak. In Monster Hunter Wilds, they tell you a story that to my taste is quite weak, but it's one of the most interesting in all of Monster Hunter. There's a new exploration. You have to go to a new territory, a kind of new continent, where we discover a new civilization and new creatures, and things like that. The whole title is based on an adventure of discovering new lands. When you arrive at these new lands, you encounter monsters, kill the monster in question, go to a small town, meet its people, kill the monster in question, go to another small town, meet its people. And so the story progresses. The hunting cycle is nearly always the same. There's a situation, there's a monster to go hunt, you go, you hunt it, you gut it, you return to base and everything continues. The events that advance the story are the battles against the big monsters. But they don't stop you there, because you can calmly choose not to confront the monster you were supposed to confront for the story to advance, and roam around the world hunting whatever crosses your path. There's no problem at all. There are certain areas of the game and maps that won't open until you hunt the monster you're supposed to hunt. But the game gives you quite a lot of freedom to do more or less what you want. There's quite a lot of dialogue, but the dialogues you can skip are the ones that don't matter as much. If there's a dialogue that comes with a cutscene and you have to hold the little button to skip it, you do have to watch that one because it explains the game's story. The rest, pure chatter. The good thing about the title is the combat. It's how the game is structured. The game is dynamic. It moves forward. It's fun. They don't slow you down too much. They don't put you on all the time. A tutorial behind another tutorial behind another tutorial. And they let you go. They let you be free. They let you go kill monsters, which is the fun part. And you keep moving forward there through the open world, and you see a bug, and you go and kill it. And that's it. Are you happy? The weapons are super fun. The armors have spectacular designs. I liked all of that. The bad thing about the game, well, the graphics, I can't say it any other way. The title would be an absolute 10 if it weren't for certain technical flaws it has. Some cinematics look horrible, while others at times appear spectacular. I don't know the criteria for this. And while I prefer a fun game with ugly cinematics over a boring game with good cinematics, I really think they could have improved this aspect a bit. On the other hand, another thing I didn't like much is the fact of the optimization on PC. And here I'm not going to speak from my own experience because I played it on PlayStation 5 Pro, but I am going to speak for several of my colleagues who were commenting on the video game because I discussed the title with several of my colleagues before making the video who told me that I started the game. Hey, quite horrible, especially on mid-range PCs. The music is great, the voice acting honestly is there. The characters don't have much depth, but there are some quite charismatic ones. And there are even characters that you end up hating because they are stupid, and that's okay, because it means there is some depth to these characters. And the game gives you those wow moments, I just discovered this, or wow, look what I found, which was actually there for you to find, but they make you believe that you found or discovered something. And that's very good. It's a shame about the cinematics, because there are some that are very interesting.
But do you feel they are poorly executed?
If you have any questions about the game, write them in the comments below. That during the first 24 hours of the video, I will be answering them.
As for the last little details there that were left loose for me to comment on, I'll tell you.
The title lasts about 15 hours, 20 hours in the campaign mode in the story, repeating monsters, looking to complete armors and so on. Then comes the endgame, which is the hardest part of the game and the part where you're supposed to be given. You already comprehend everything and must apply it to hunt larger, tougher monsters and continue progressing. During the first half hour of the game, don't get overwhelmed if they talk to you a lot and give you a lot of dialogues and so on. It's a Japanese game, they're always like this, it ends soon. I think by the first hour of the game you're already in rhythm. Don't get obsessed with picking up everything there is because you end up with too many materials. Don't worry, don't be afraid to spend the monster materials on armor and such because you end up with too many materials. Don't worry, there are some materials that you won't get unless you defeat the monster 20 times, because they have a very low drop rate. And maybe you have the complete set and you're missing the helmet, and that helmet is made with a very specific material. You won't get it until you defeat the enemy. Many times you can play it alone, calmly, because you summon allies from the machine, or you can play it in online cooperative, something I neither did nor tried, regrettably. I don't have friends, but it looks very fun to play with buddies, especially the endgame, which is the hard part. Finally, closing the video and returning to the start. Let me tell you, if you've never played Monster Hunter, or you've tried to play it and you couldn't because you didn't like it or whatever, this game series is probably the ideal one if you want to have fun with it. That's how I feel about it. I've never lasted more than 3 hours in a Monster Hunter, and I finished this one and I want to keep playing. The world is great, despite its horrible appearance. I hope you enjoyed the review and learned how to play. If so, please let me know with a like. If you want to keep discovering video games, subscribe to this channel or watch some of these videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.